Hello, everybody. So, I have been meaning to do this for a long time, and now I have added, so this is my GitHub repo. So it's Ericm81 RhinoShare, and my scripts have been there for a while, and the instructions for putting the scripts is wherever you put that script folder, if you want my finger rail script, then you create a alias in Rhino that says run Python script, and then the file path to your version of that script. So this is what it looked like on mine when I was creating this, but I have overhauled my shared folder to make it much simpler to push new things out to you guys, and I will show you that in a minute. But the instructions for using the scripts is here. How I generate, these layers, and I've tweaked some of this functionality over time. And you would have to come up here and you can just go to code and say download zip, and it will give you a zip file that contains all of these folders, the licenses, all of this stuff. Git ignore should not be in here. That should be it. Git should ignore its own ignore. I will fix that later, but I have added geometry to here. Okay, so before we had scripts. This is how I create layers. This is how I create a finger rail, and this is how I create recolor the layers. And color, I think, is just using that's just a little utility I was using. But you can go into finger rail and you can see this is how it's created. Now, for me personally, I know that when I cast in my casting powder printed with my resin, I'm going to have about 1/8 of a finger size of shrinkage. So I have an offset field in here called gypsum that will automatically add. If I tell it to make it a 7, it's going to make it a 7.125. If I tell it to make a 7.5, it's going to make it a 7.625. In platinum, I get about 0.35 shrinkage of a finger rail. So this is automatically going to add it. Shrinkage is not uniform and linear. It is non-linear. So you don't want to scale the ring. You want to just make things on the ring a little bit larger, like the finger size. For stones, it's usually not that big of a problem, but for finger sizes, it is. Or you can just go with a 0. And if you have different values for that, you can change how much of an offset you want on there. If you've calibrated in your process, you can add an extra one on here. You can say comma and add rubber mold, and then put a comma here and add, a full half size. Okay. So you can modify this to however you want. My default is 7. You can default it to something else. And then down here, it just goes through the process of creating the thing, and it will put it onto a 0 layer and lock it. So the 0 layer is, I try and keep that locked at all times. That's my reference layer. I never want it to get messed with. But we can come in here and I can do a finger rail real quick. Finger rail, and we'll just do size 7. I've defaulted it to gypsum and moved to my 0 layer is true. All things that you can customize, but we'll just go ahead and do that. And so now, it's not locked because I've been playing with my templates. Okay. It also puts on the geometry, if you go over to properties, which these tabs are out of order now, it'll say size 7 plus 0.125. So even though if I need to reference, like, what size is this really? You can see that it's size 7 plus 0.125, so that is 7.125. It's tagged to the geometry itself, so you can always go back and check when your layer is not locked. Okay. Going back to that. So that was the scripts, which was the first things I put out here. Also my settings. People want my Rhino settings, and I say export your options first so you have a backup, because I do a lot of funny things in these categories that I tell you not to click on. I have a Swift Point Z mouse that uses gestures. I have a space mouse that allows me to do this, you know, kind of smooth scrolling of the viewport. People always ask, how do you do this kind of scrolling? It's a 3D connection space mouse. So you do not want to import anything else than what I have here. These are safe to import if you want my color scheme, how my grid looks, how my guide rails look. Are they called guide rails? Add guideline, my guidelines. Okay, so you can come and add a guideline to something, and now you have an extra one right there. I don't want that one though, so I'm going to click it and get rid of it. Okay, other things in there. So there's my settings, and use at your own risk. And we also have images is just for the README files that, you know, little instructions I give you. Those images are just the images that you're seeing in the, it's just a GitHub thing. But now I've added this extra thing called geometry. And here are all of my blocks. Okay, the fishtail cutter. I have several different brilliant ones. It just has different cutters attached to each. So I can always take the prong set one and turn it into a bezel one, but it's just ease of use. Cushion, emerald, heart, marquee. The heart is junk, but marquee, oval, pear, princess. The sprue that I use, a triangle stone versus a trillion cut. Those are there. And then also my templates. So when I am dragging things in from this side of the screen over here, those templates are now in here as well, including we'll just say file new here. Don't save that. And this file, this Rhino R7. This is important for using my templates because I'm going to open it up. And when I bring in something like the shank, okay, the shank relies on import file. Let's turn on the layers for shank so you can see everything. This template relies on the fact that this is a specific plane and this is a specific cylinder. Okay, the GUID, the 128-bit randomly generated number that came with this surface is the same one as when I made the template, so that if you stretch this, it will update the history over there. It's very important. It comes in not having history runs, but you can call history update, and it will update it. Or when you size this to your finger rail, let's say finger rail size 7, which is the default, so I can just hit enter. So when I take this cylinder and do scale 2D, make sure project is on, from 0 from there to there, history is going to update, and that will get updated with it. So this template file is in the library, Jewelry R7. This template file is very important for the rest of these templates. They won't work without it. You can change this template file as long as you keep the geometry. So for example, I have an ultra widescreen monitor and I like having this many viewports. If you don't like that, you can change this viewport layout and move this somewhere else. Okay, save it to your personal settings, because next time you download my stuff, it's going to, well, hopefully you would have it overwrite this. But I'm going to do a new file here. Actually, let's just open this R7 template. Save changes to untitled. No. And so now I'm not starting a new file. I'm opening a file. This is how you make something as your template. So I'm going to do save as template. And here are all the templates that come with Rhino. This is the one that I'm using. So you can make changes to this. I'm just going to change this viewport layout to here. Okay, and I'm going to go File, Save as Template. Tell it OK. And now when I say, let's do this and make this big and say New File and open this, it is going to open to how you saved it. Okay. So that's how you get from here in the templates to having it show up in new. That's how you get it to stick here. And then you can say use this file every time Rhino starts, and that will make it the default template for you. Okay, so that's going to annoy me, and I'm just going to do that and resave that as my template. Save as template. Okay, and now it's back to what it was. There's also a R7 appendage underneath here. Usually means that I am using something from Rhino 7 that will not work in Rhino 6. And I have done that a lot because of join copy that was added in Rhino 7. I'm about to move over to Rhino 8 because Rhino 8 allows you to do, right now when you do a mirror, and I'm going to mirror this across, and it wants you to define the plane. Rhino 8 has an option where if I create a plane, then when I go to mirror, I can specify that plane, and if I change the angle of this plane, it will now mirror from there to there. It will now update that mirror according to this plane, which is wonderful. Undo all of that, which is wonderful for things like my shank. Oh, grab this and drag it in, import file. So right now I'm using this join copy, and we can turn on the layers, the junk, and see that on the other side is a mirrored copy of that. I can move this anywhere I want on this line. I need to move all of it, not just what's being seen. Make sure lock children is on. And I do have shank profiles here. That's how they get into space. I can move all of this anywhere I want on this line. Okay. But I can't move it if this is in the way and I want to move it over here. Well, that just broke history. Okay. Now the whole thing is scuffed. Don't want that. So that's probably why I'm going to Rhino 8 soon to use that new feature, because I'm feeling a little bit limited in how I lay out my files right now. So I am going to turn that back off and turn that junk off, and so we can just see this here. So let's make a ring with these templates. So I have a job here. I have a job here, and this is pretty much a 15-minute jobber using my template file, where we want a size 7, we want it in white gold, we've got baguettes and princesses, they're 1.4 by 1.4, the baguette in the center is a 1.4 by 3, and then we have 6 rounds, 1.4, 1.4, 1.4. The stones have been pulled, there's the carat weight, there is an Excel file where they all got measured originally. So the baguette 146 by 303. The princesses are 1.4 squares, and then the rounds. So let's get to making this, and I can take and sometimes I like to do this where I make this a picture frame, and I just sit this somewhere over here, and I throw this onto throw it onto the 0 layer, change object layer, and lock. Oh. One more thing about sharing my profiles. There is another way. So this, you would have to come over here to the project, and you would go to code and say download zip, and you will get a zip file. I can just go ahead and click it and show you guys that it does indeed go back. Come on. Open archive. There we go. So if you look at this and come in here, you can see geometry, images, scripts, settings, the get ignore that needs to go away, the license, and the readme. This is the readme. It shows, if you have a readme in a folder, it shows here. This is like a GitHub thing. And then in geometry, templates, there's all the templates that I have going. So if you want real-time synchronization, meaning if you see me on stream make a new template and save it in here, how it can automatically be added to your machine, there is something called ResilioSync. I have a pro license for this because it's how I sync CAD files from home to work to the print server. This does synchronization between my two desktops, and it does synchronization to an offsite backup, and it does synchronization between the different servers that I have running. I made a folder called share that is read-only. Okay, so if you make a change in that folder, it may get overridden later, which is why I said if you make changes to this and you want to save it somewhere else. Because whether you restore the zip file or you use something like ResilioSync to get real-time updates, either way is fine. Once you do this, you will need the encryption key to log in, or not the encryption, not to log in, but you'll need the encryption key to get access to this sync stream. And that's in the Discord in the AirChem sticky. So that is another way to go about it. There's one more thing. Your file system is not going to look like mine. So when you open up this template, all these blocks are linked in here. If you need to, you're not going to have a documents folder under AirChem. It's going to be your name or somewhere else. You can update this. Go to properties, excuse me, and tell it where this file is. So if you brought this in and you don't have this exact same folder structure I do, the link status will be missing. It'll be missing. You can just go to properties, change this path, and then it will be up to date. Yep, okay. So let's go about making this thing. I think that is everything that I wanted to cover with how to use or get access to this thing that you see me always using and dragging stuff into the folder, and my blocks, my stones. I think that's now up there. When I start using Rhino 8, I may make a subfolder in here and put all the Rhino 7 stuff in, so that I have Rhino 8 as a first class citizen in here. I do update these quite often when I run into a problem. I generally don't make the problem worse. I make it better. But just keep that in mind if you've got automatic updates set on through ResilioSync. Okay, let's make this ring. So first thing I need to do is insert a block, and I want a baguette cut, and this is a 1.4 by 3. So I'm going to make 3 my long edge, and I'm going to spin this by 90 degrees. And then over here under transform, so this is like a typical baguette cut. This is a skinnier baguette, so I'm just going to say 1.4. And that will be the dimensions of that baguette. And then we've got princesses. So I'm going to say insert. I'm going to find Leo princess cut. The prefix Leo, I eventually want to push more coding stuff. And my prefix for all my commands, I just went with Leo as a project name. That's all that means. Leo the lion. Okay, so a 1.4 princess, pop that in, and then we need rounds. Leo brilliant, we want the thread set, and 1.4. Now, any changes you make to a block, you want to do it at the beginning, because if you edit a block you break history with it. So even if you don't, like, I generally put an offset curve on here that's 0.25 in diameter, and then I put that onto my spacer layer. Okay. Now, if I edit this block, even if I don't change this curve, history will be broken. It's just one of the things about blocks. So you want to do any block editing before. Now this, I don't need this fishtail cutter to cut the edges because I've got a mill grain lip here. So I'm going to edit this and just the embedded block definition. I don't want to change the default for all future models, just the one that's in this file. I'm going to take that and that curve that defines it, and I'm going to hit delete and tell it OK. So now if I were to resize this, that spacer turns into this for some reason. Don't know why, but that's not what we want. So I'm going to delete this spacer and I'm going to run offset again off this curve, 0.25 up, and put that back onto the spacer layer, group those two, and lock spacer. Okay, so now when I change the size of this, I get that update to work. For this one, I'm not going to have a spacer on this and this, and I will explain why in a minute, but we are going to need to change these cutters, but I will wait to do that at the end to show you why. And I'm just going to take this and move it flush with this one, and then I'm going to take this and I want it to be that's a 1/4 millimeter off. I want it to be a 1/2 millimeter off, minus 0.25. And then I need 3 of these. So I'm going to linear array. I want 3 of them, and I want to go from there to there. And now I have those spaced properly. Okay, so we grab these. I have my shank in the file already, and we just say flow rigid. So copy yes, rigid groups no, stretch yes, and then we're going to go from here and we're going to use the target surface of this, and then part of that template file brought in this curve, and it has a curve right here, this white curve and this white curve, which are on shank flow, or no, stone layout. Shank flow is this one, so you can change the shape of it. Not that I want that for this, but so this is on stone layout. And then I want these, right now it's at the girdle. I want this to be 0.35 buried into the metal. And now the last thing we have to do is adjust the length of this so that our offsets line up. So I'm going to stretch this out more. And that is pretty close to 0.25. Let's look at this stone. And we can see that that is about right, but I want these girdles to be at the same level. So I'm going to drag this down a little bit more. So now those are at the same level, and we can make one more tweak here to get this just where they kiss. Now on a channel set, especially where we have the same width, my setter is going to set the center one and then put this one in the channel and slide it as close as he can so the girdles are, for all intents and purposes, touching. Okay. And then he's going to set this one, and then he's going to take the next one. This is easy because we've only got 3 stones, but if it was a whole channel, he would do this. Based on the number of stones, I give him a little extra here at the end. So as he's sliding these over and sliding these over, if these were all 1.49s, and let's make that 1.49 in the X, 1.49. Okay, so if that was wider than it should have been, this little extra space that I've added in here is going to be enough for the setter to make any adjustments to the actual length of the whole thing while keeping these guys flush together. I don't want to do that. I just want to leave it as 0.4 and know that I have extra space, a whole 0.5 millimeter here between the two, which is plenty for 3 stones, or well, really just 1 stone 1.5, because half and the other will be on the other side. So that gives me the extra space the setter will need in case he needs to make any adjustments. And I've got my girdles lined up, and I did something out of order. Before I do that, I should have set the width of my shank, because I may have to adjust. This stretches, so as I change this, the width won't matter, but the height will. So I've got 1.4 going across here, and I want 0.5 millimeter of metal on each side. So that would be 2.4, and this is 2, so I would add 0.2, and I always give it a little extra for rounding error, so that when we click on unlock our curve here and click on it, now it is I said 2.41, it's actually 2.403, because it doesn't quite touch right here. You can add more control points and make it touch, which we can do that. Insert control point, and I can pop another one on that mid. And now if we look at it, this will be closer to 2.41, and it actually went a little bit over 2.419, which means I did math wrong somewhere, but that's okay. You can see it's closer now to touching. Not quite, but it's closer now to touching. And the more control points you do, it gets down to a rounding error. But then here, I need to start to transition this rounded over edge to a square edge, so that the setter has metal to pull from for doing bead setting. So if I look at my shank profiles here, you can see that these are they're going from here to here. These are generated with tween curves and some extra stuff. I won't get into all that, but so this is kind of the midway point on the shank. So this, you know, if you're looking at this as a clock face, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 6 o'clock, that is going to be at the 9 o'clock. This will adjust the 9 o'clock, and I can change this to start to come into a square. You saw when I inserted the knot here, or control point here, it did add over to here because there is history on these. So I selectively break history. I'm going to take and turn lock history off, and I want the Z on this to match there, and I want this to kind of come up to there, and it's going to do the same to here. And by the time we get to the top, I want that to be a hard edge, so I move those up to there. We maintain virtually the same inner softening on the shank, but now if you look at it, you go from a round edge to starting to harden up, and you can see this iso curve. Let's go to this view and make it shaded. You can see this iso curve as it transitions over to the hard edge. You can see how that's working. You can also turn on the junk. I'll turn off the shank profiles because the flow for that, because I don't need to see it. And you can see it here, like a little cleaner, how that transitions from a soft edge to a hard edge. And you can add as many control points as you want in here to do really funky shapes. You know, you can really get any shape over here with symmetry to the other side just by editing this one side. And the last thing I want to do is this top edge. So my shank comes in at a default of 2 millimeter by 1.8. We made it wider to go to 2.4. And then the top, I'm going to turn off junk here and make sure I have lock back on so I don't accidentally adjust something. Turn the points on for this. I might want this at the top to be 2.1. Okay, somewhere in that range. And I can click on that and see 242 by 2154. Okay, close enough. We can see that when I did that, I automatically raised all of this, but I made the length of this curve longer. So these now have extra space. I should have done it in order. Let me move that out of the way so you can see here. You can also come in here to the properties on it and go to the material and say transparency, and somewhere in there so you can see geometry through it. I don't care about that for this, so I'm just gonna move it out of the way and lock it. So now I'm back here and I'm just gonna make this a little bit longer to remove some of that space, and that looks about perfect. And if I come over here and look, you know, this is perfect for me. Measure the distance there, it's 0.007. It's essentially touching, okay? So now I have my stone layout. I have this coming to a gentle height. If you want the height to constantly be growing, then you go to the middle one here and you make this from 1.8 to like 1.95. And now you will have a continuous increase in the thickness. It's clamped here so that when we mirror it, we get curvature continuity, and it's clamped here so we get curvature continuity. But we've done that. Now, what else do we need to do to make this ring? Well, I like to give my setter a little bit of a guide for doing mill grain. So I'm going to make a line from here to there, and I'm going to expand that, and I'm going to go up 0.25 divided by 2. And then I'm going to do another line from midpoint, and I want to go at the midpoint between here and here. I'm going to do one there, and then I'm going to mirror this down to the bottom. I'm going to grab all 3 of these, turn lock history off, and trim these down. Boom, 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 boom. And then turn lock back on so I don't accidentally break something else. For this, I guess right about here is where I want to stop giving him that guide. And then I'm going to take these curves and join them up. Join, 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 join. And I want this to be at the same level as this line. So that was 0.35. Okay. Now I'm going to flow this into place. I'm not going to do rigid this time. Copy, rigid, no. Preserve structure, no. Stretch, yes. So I'm going to go like that. And my target surface is this, and the curve is this. And that will give me this outline on here that will be just kind of a guide cutter. And what I do is I pipe that with a diameter, with round caps. I'm going to say 0.15. And in the printed model, it will just be a light, or the cast model, it'll just be a light score line that when he goes to take his graver and cut this mill grain lip, it's just a guide for him to follow so that this side is as thick as this side. Just a small touch that makes the whole thing look a little bit better. So this would go onto a cutter layer, and I'm going to say underneath cutters, I'm going to put a new sub layer and call this mill grain guide. And I don't really care about making this super organized, so I'm going to grab this, that curve, and that surface, and just throw them all onto the mill grain guide. Okay. What else? Well, I want a little lip of metal here because it's channel set. I talked about that in the last video, how I just add a little bit of metal lip here. I'm going to do that in 3D coat. So really the last thing is this channel is not, you know, if I just cut these plug cutters out, there's going to be this little block of metal here, and I don't want that. So with rounds, you really have no choice but to define a define a center cutter and just cut through the whole thing. But when you're dealing with straight stones in a channel, a quick and easy thing you can do is edit this, edit the embedded definition, not the one that we will use in our templates. And I'm just going to take this and stretch it this way. Okay. And you can really overdo it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to stretch it that way. And now this side is at the same angle and width so the stone can sit there, but there is, look at it through this view, there is breathing room on either end. And we want to do the same thing here, but we scaled this non-uniformly, meaning we went in here and said this is a 1.4 instead of the ideal proportion, which was 1.8, whatever. So we just insert another, baguette cut, and we put it right here, and we can edit the embedded version of this. And this one, we're just going to drag out a little bit wider than it should be and tell it okay. And now our non-uniformly scaled one has the same thing. So now when we look back at our ring and how this channel is going to get cut out, you can see that these are going to overlap, and we get this nice flat area for this stone to sit on. You know, with rounds, when we do that whole center line cutter, it just leaves like a point, but they're going to take a setting burr and dig in there and make this little half moon shape where it's flat for the stone to sit on. For this, if we used a round channel cutter, this stone could, well, it would touch that round spot. Let me put a circle on here, right about there. And let's isolate those. Okay, so if that plug cutter was just wallowing out the center of that band, when we go to set this in here, it would be easy for it to, it's not in a stable position, okay? It doesn't have a flat shelf to sit on. So that's another reason why with using these cutters, you get a nice flat shelf, which your setter will appreciate. There's no chance that the stone will be at a weird canter and not face, you know, in the Z direction that you want it to face, or the normal direction that you want it to face. This one will face in a proper normal direction where this is pointing towards your center. Almost, we raise the thickness of this so it's not going to point directly to 0, but close enough where all of these are, you know, transitioning towards pointing to that center point. So that is it for the CAD. And I want to take this and these guys. I'm going to do them in groups and mirror that to the other side. So my mirror command, if you look at this, it's mirror, copy, pause, always copy across the y-axis, and then it figures out how to select those and put them into a group. So I've just combined my mirror where it automatically groups them at the end. And when I mirror across the x-axis, the little icons give you kind of a hint. I should make this, the red dots go north and south. Yeah, I'll do that later. I should put my toolbars into the shared folder. Another thing to do. Okay, I will add toolbars at some point. But that's how I get my automatic groupings. I select the previous one, which is the group that I went to mirror, and select the last created stuff, which is the stuff on the other side, and then I'm going to group those. This guide will do the same thing, mirror to the other side, and the shank, mirror to the other side. And now, before I go and save this, I like to clean up and organize a little bit. So I will come down here to my shank. The controls are all done. I don't need to see those. I'm going to minimize that. My sprue, I want to turn that on. I updated my sprue so it's a little easier to score with a knife. When you go to break this off, I made it a little wing tab here. Doesn't affect the stability of it, but it will be much easier. You know what? These stones do not come down as far as I wanted them to. Well, through the magic of history, I'm going to take and unlock this and grab its children, okay? And grab its children's children. And I'm going to say copy. And I copied it to the clipboard. Now I'm going to hide those, okay? And paste them. Now I'm going to grab this guy right here, and I'm going to move it from this point to this point. Oh, lock children is on. I'm going to just grab, no, I want to grab him, turn lock children off, and move him from this point to this point. Okay. And what you're going to see is that moved this guy down to there, and it moved that guy down to there. And when I turn on the original one that I copied, it's still there as well. Copy paste history is a wonderful thing for making last minute changes. And actually, this is my warning, like don't go past here, but I kind of want to be near there. Okay, if we're looking at this as a clock face, this is 10 to 2 is where I want to go. This is like 9:45-ish. Okay, so I generally don't want to put stones past here. You can't see them. This is between the fingers. They get wear with the fingers rubbing on each other. It's just not a good idea to put stones past here. That was the rule for centuries until the internet, when you started taking really high resolution pictures. And then people started putting more and more stones down to the bottom and having them go all the way around. It's just not a good idea, but it looks better in a picture and it sells better online. So you can blame the internet for how that happened. Move that from there to there, and our guide. And I want another one. So I'm going to paste. And I'm going to grab the newer one. So with the group, 18 is going to be the new one. 4 was the original. I can just grab that. I'd like to hide it just to make sure, but you can also infer which is the new one, which is the old one. I'm going to turn lock children off again, and I'm going to move this from, let's do it overhead so we get a nice clean point there to there. And I could have moved all of this in one go. Move that from there to there. Okay, so now we have added 2 more stones than the original design, but that was just a lack of foresight on my thought when I drew this up. I do want this to be a nice stacking band that somebody will want to wear. So I'm going to add that, and now I am closer to my don't go past line, but that looks better. Okay, so and something else I'm noticing is that this is not approaching a square fast enough, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit. I want this kind of to hit there, so I'm just going to tighten that up a little bit. And now I've got sharp edge there and pretty sharp edge here, because remember the transition, this transition is at the 9 o'clock point. Okay, so that is done. This is where I save it, and I am going to turn my screen off because I don't want to show as soon as I hit save, it's going to pop up a thing, and then you'll see customer names. So I'm going to hit the BRB while I save it. Okay, so now I have saved it out as stock baguette princess round stacking band dot sample, because there's a real one over there. So this is the sample that I'm using for this demo. And then now that I've saved it, this is how I double check that, did I save this file? There's a save as. All the history is still in here. I broke some little things, which prevented me from having to go do a whole new linear array, whole new flow, all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, history is still here. You just saw me change how quick, wrong thing, how quick this was moving, right? All this history is here. That's where I save it. Now's the point that I didn't finish tidying up before I saved it, did I? I did not. So I want to turn off things like this control, move that down. I've got my sprue on. Any other control stuff I want to turn off. My spacers they can stay on. But really, I wanted to get it, shank flow can go off. I want to get it nice and tidy so that when I do save, it is going to put that out there. And also notice that I position the camera so that when I'm going through here, let's see if I can show this without showing customer names. External CAD work. Okay, no names are being shown. So now when I go here and find that sample, and look, you can see what it is. This is why I tidy it up, because I use these when I'm going back through. I put as many little keywords in here as possible. It's a stacking band. It's got baguettes, princess, round. I use the same naming scheme. Baguettes are always bag. Tapered bags are always TP bag. I use the same scheme, so when I'm searching through the thousands of CAD models I have on here, looking for something to reuse, because I do reuse these a lot, I can look at this picture and see what it is. If you save this thing in this viewport with this being shown, and I go back to go back to that folder. That doesn't tell you anything. Okay, so that's why I clean it up, tidy it up, position my camera, say cheese, hit save, and there you go. All right, now I take and unlock things, grab this, hit delete, and make sure my delete button, left click turns lock back on afterwards, right click says lock no, delete, and it will remain with history turned off. Whoop. Oh my goodness, I just did something to my zoom extents. Oh, I did something really weird to my camera there. I right clicked while I was using the space mouse, and it did not like that. Okay, so here is, I've got lock history off. I'm going to join that up, and then I'm going to say select open. Well, that's open. Okay, delete that. Anything else open? And this is selecting open surface and open poly surface. So there's not much else to do here. So then we are going to export to 3D Coat, and I will go ahead and launch 3D Coat up here and get my Wacom out. And we are going to say voxel sculpting open, and I'm going to move this off screen to find where it is. Open that up, and from my last video, you guys know that I've used, I hit auto scale. That is not what I wanted. So I'm going to do reset access, reset space, and then go to scale and do 2250. That's about what auto scale was, but I want it to be what I have it as, so I know I can use my shorthands for decimate. Import as a child, so we get our layers, and tell it apply, and then switch yes, always yes, and then switch over to fill, so we can take a look at this. And let's go ahead and take our cutters, our gems, we'll move those to the white, a white material, and our seats, and subtract from the shank, and our cutter mill grain guide, subtract from the shank, and oh, doggone it, I messed up already. Huh. Turn off the shank surf here and look at this. Oh, okay. This is a problem with, this is a problem that happens sometimes. And it's a Rhino thing with blocks. These are overlaying each other. So how do we fix this? File new, don't save. I believe if you just take your blocks select block objects, block instance, and say explode, and explode all of those, and then export it. And I'm going to turn off the screen. Oh, I didn't have to, I moved this off screen and it already had it over there so you guys couldn't see it. Go back to scale, 2250. Okay, import as child. Okay, hit apply. First time, yes, always yes. Why do I read it? Okay, so that did not fix it. It got one of them, but not the rest of them. It got one side and these, but not the other side. This is a bug that's been in Rhino since version 3. When you mirror a block, this happens. So I'm going to undo the explode block. And grab these. And this and this. And we're going to isolate these. So I'm going to isolate. I'm going to remove from group and take all of these out of the groups they were in. And I'm going to delete this side. Wait, no. This is my original side. I'm going to delete the mirror because the mirrored blocks are the ones with the issue. Sometimes it doesn't. Most times it will not do this. But because that overlapped that is why this is having a problem. So I'm going to delete those, grab these, and say explode. So I'm going to explode those blocks. Explode. Okay, so now we have, let's make sure select open. We have no open poly surfaces, but now these are not blocks anymore. Okay, I'm going to take and mirror this to the other side. Show all. So now this is a block instance, but it doesn't matter. It was the mirrored blocks that were the problem. Okay, so now we're going to export this to 3D Coat. And we'll do a file new, don't save, and grab that file. Scale 2250. Import as child, apply, yes, always yes, and fill. Now our cutters are there. Okay, so it's just a bug that's been in since Rhino 3 about mirroring a block. That's all it was. It really only becomes a problem when you have two blocks overlap each other, like I did with this plug cutter. I don't know if or when that will ever be fixed, but it is a problem. Run back through this, subtract from shank, subtract from, no, copy and subtract from shank, because I am going to make my little ledge on here. My gems are white, my sprue is separate, and this is just a, we'll do copy and subtract from. I doubt I'll need it, but I might need it, so we'll just do it. And you can see it's just the hint of a line that will show up. So I am going to turn these back on, and I'm going to go to, let's see. I don't want clay. I want, let's do build up. And now I'm on the Wacom. Oop. And I want symmetry across the X and Y. And I'm just going to make sure I'm on the shank. Turn symmetry back on. And I'm just going to put a blob of metal on top of here. Nothing pretty. It's just so for the setter. Right down to there. Okay. I need to update my princess cutter so it's a little bit taller, because it's not going to grab all of that, but that's okay. I'm just going to say copy and subtract from shank again and turn that off and turn the gems off, and we can look at this channel now. And yeah, that's poking over a little bit, so you can go to scrape and make sure we're on the shank. Looking at it from this way, that's going to be too aggressive, and we can just take and knock that down a little bit. Doesn't need to be pretty, just a little extra metal for the lip. If you want to be really nice to your setter, you can take and put this in the CAD model, or just put a little center line in here so he has something to follow. Okay, we're going to do a smooth all. Next time, skip that dialogue, please. Yes. Just do a smooth all, and that is it. Turn the gems on, disable symmetry, and make it an isometric projection, and turn the sprue off. Okay. This is where we say cheese and grab a picture for the job bag with green shot. And now we get rid of the gems, turn on the sprue, and move these over to surface mode. So for the sprue, I want to decimate that down to 98. And for the shank, I want to decimate that down to 90, which is why bringing it in at 2250 was important. I know what these numbers are to get all the detail I need. When I look at this in wireframe mode, I can see biggish triangles, and then where we have curvature, we have smallish triangles. And you can see in here, maybe if I make this a different color and turn off the extra contrast, maybe an in-between point. Oh, there we go. Now you can see that there are smallish triangles where you have a lot of curvature, and bigger ones where they are pretty much flat. And that will get us a fairly small file size while preserving all the detail we need. Okay, we can turn that wireframe back off. Something more comfortable for my eyes. And here is where I save it out. And again, for this, you have a middle mouse button that will show you recent, and you look to make sure that you did save it before you broke all the history. You have a save as that's right about here, and every time it's going to be right about here. If you had to do a lot of modifications and it's down here, then maybe you want to save it again as a different file name. So you still have the history of the original, but with all the changes you made. But everything that happened between this save as, here and here, if I have to come back, if something's wrong with this STL and I've got to make a change, I need to get back to this point to make that change, right? So there's nothing between this save as and that STL that needs to be saved. Okay, you save it with history, and then you save the finished STL output, and all the stuff in the middle is junk. You'll never reuse it. There's no point to have a saved version of it. And this gives you a file that, if I remember, oh, I made this ring like 2 years ago, it just needs one more princess. Well, I can jump back to that history version and copy this with history, copy the original, copy its child, paste, drag one more in, drag these guys down, and I have this ring now with 2 princesses instead of 1. I'm always thinking, do I have a version of that? Which is why having these kind of pictures, when I'm going and searching for baguette princess round stacking band, I can see every version of a round baguette princess stacking band, how it looks, and which one is closest to what I need to make this time. That gives me reuse. That is my ultimate goal, is to have reusable things. In the past, making reusable files took longer than using a matrix generator that generates the thing for you. But every time I started a model in matrix, I would start from scratch. Now I've kind of got my templates to where I can make it faster than I can in matrix and have a place to go back to reuse a component. And reusable components are the only thing in my mind that makes you a more efficient modeler. If you just use builders, it is always going to take you 45 minutes to make that piece. You'll never be faster than 45 minutes. But if you have something with history, you might get it down to 5 minutes to make a new iteration of that ring, because you have everything set up, everything organized, where you can find where the controls are. You can find where the curves are. You can see how it's getting from your control location to where it needs to be in space through this layout. You've got all of that information organized that makes it reusable. Okay, I think that is the end of this stream. So the link to the GitHub is in the video description, I'm fairly sure, and if it's not, I will put it there. ResilioSync, the encryption key to join, you will have a read-only copy. If you make a change, and I make changes to this all the time without thinking of anybody else's feelings, okay? So if you make a change to yours and I make a change to mine, mine will override yours. Generally, my templates get better over time as I realize, oh, there's a better way to do this. There's a faster way to do this. There's a simpler way to do this. These get better over time. So I'm putting it out there as an option because it's probably not bad. I just wouldn't save your own things in here, like any changes you made to your template file that opens when Rhino starts. You need to keep my geometry, but if you want to change the viewports or the colors or whatever, it does include changes. So all of this is in the document properties. I do have my own annotation style. This is a modified version of millimeter small that prints well on a sheet of paper. Doing small things on a sheet of paper. My grid, I have my grid the way I like it. I have the units set with absolute tolerance of 0.01. The default is 0.001. That is not a fun thing to work with, and it's totally unnecessary when our printer has a resolution of 0.03. Okay, 30 micron printer, you're dealing with 0.03 millimeter voxels. So absolute tolerance of 0.01 makes everything better. Joins, booleans, everything is better with a looser tolerance. You just don't want to go so sloppy that you lose dimensional accuracy. All of my changes in here are included in this Jewelry R7. If I open up a standard new, we've already saved it. If you get nervous, we come in here and see, oh, we do have a save. Okay, so file new, don't save that. And we go to regular small objects. Well, this is Rhino's viewport layout, the default. If we go to tools, options, and we come up here to units, you can see it's 0.001. If I use their, put a circle on here, 1.3 millimeter circle. Okay, and if I use their dimension, diameter dimension, and I grab that, oh, yeah, millimeter small. Okay, that's my modified one was millimeter small because that's the default, and I don't want to have to remember to click that every time. Look at how big that is. Imagine you're doing a pave layout with a bunch of 1.3s. Okay, your pave layout would probably look something like this. Okay, how do you print that? Let me pull up printout using my Okay, so let's open look at the 3DM. This was not framed very well, but you can see that it's a pave earring with a bezel set center. And if I open this up, I mean, yeah, it's a little jumbled, but you can see that the size, let me zoom out on this. So my job bag can take half a sheet of paper. So we tear this off at the midpoint and then fold it in half. This is plenty big enough for the setter to see. It's a little jumbled, but he can make out, you know, this is half a sheet of paper. He can see, okay, that 1.5 goes there, right? All of that is in this template file. This is how millimeter small looks by default. It's anyways, okay. I think that's everything. Does anybody have any questions before we end the stream? No, you guys good? All right. Well, I'm going to call it there. And the link to the GitHub and the Discord will be in the video description. And if you guys have think of any questions later, you can always post them there. All right. It was my pleasure. You're welcome. And we are going to end stream here. All right. Bye, guys.